I can do.
Okay. First order of business is the consent agenda. A motion to
Well,
approve.
I have a matter back to the minutes. Find my copy of the minutes here. On page 6, sewer report. Service calls for the pump system for the new sewer, and there were issues raised at our public hearing about, what was the expectation to be in terms of how much service would be required, what the nature of the service calls would be, and how often they would occur. And so in that discussion, I reported that, the line that I want to amend says, it's about a little more than halfway down in my report. The average time was 3 to 7 years after some simple homeowner education about what not to place in the system. And what I thought I was saying was for one sewer system in the Atlanta, Georgia area that the opponents had raised as an example of the potential problems, the average time was increased from 3 to 7 years after some simple homeowner education about what not to place in the system.
It's increased from 3 to 7 years beyond?
Increased from 3 to 7 years, not just 3 to 7 years, but yeah. I'd like to amend the sentence to say, for one sewer system in the Atlanta, Georgia area, the average time was increased from 3 to 7 years after some simple homeowner education about what not to place in the system.
Okay. All right, so I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda with the changes that Brian suggested to that.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The consent agenda is approved. Public comment? Nobody's here tonight, so on to unfinished business. Devil's Lake Plan, Septic Tank Revitalization Program.
Yeah, just briefly, I hope that you guys can all make the meeting, the joint meeting between City Council and our board, and then also representatives of the county, Tuesday, April 9th at 3 p.m. in council chambers right here. And we'll have a talk about septic systems and moving forward on that. And then at the last meeting, you guys had requested just, where were we when we kind of started this in 2010? What was kind of the original language that we were looking at? And then where are we today, like on possible changes? So I just put together like a little info sheet that's in front of you. And for the discussed changes, it's not really being proposed. I think that's what we're going to find out in this next meeting is, what things are being proposed. And what that really is just kind of my summary, my taking, my understanding of the discussions that we've been having with the city and, like where their staff is at in this. So, this isn't in stone or anything. It's just kind of, I think, the direction that we could be headed at. And I think just kind of the two bigger things on there, two things I want to draw attention to is the one, like the who is included, and I think we've talked about this, like kind of going back to just like a city within city limits. And then the other thing I want to talk about was number 3 on discussed changes, and that's on how frequently properties are going to be inspected. And for some reason, when we started the conversation, we talked about 5 years, and I don't remember exactly when or how that number jumped to 10 years, but I think it was somewhere in kind of this negotiations and see maybe 10 years is more reasonable, and we went to that. The problem with that 10 years is it's really not based on anything. You really can't find a reputable source that says you should have your system inspected on 10 years. With 3 to 5, on the other hand, like DEQ says that, EPA says that, pretty much any experts in the field will tell you that 3 to 5 years is a good time to look at an inspection. So it just suggests as we move forward, we can get into this this meeting on April 9th, we're kind of discussing, what are the new parameters of this. That would just be one suggestion that I would make, is that we consider kind of going back to that 3 to 5 year for an inspection.
Okay. Yeah, if you'd share your sources on that, I'd like to see it later.
Sure.
Thanks.
Randy also asked at the last meeting if we could get a comparison of a copy of the old resolution.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't see anything about that.
Cheat sheet. This is just the cheat sheet that you went
Do you have
through.
that online?
Oh, okay.
Can you find that 2010 online?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can dig it up so you don't have to go digging for it, though.
If you do, though, if you look at, it's 2010, like Resolution 03 or 04, I think.
It's easy.
03, yeah.
03, yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, this is great, Seth. If you emailed this to me, I did not see it, but
No, I didn't. This was kind of kicked out late, so I apologize for that.
okay. Well, thanks. I mean, this is great. This is what we were looking for. Better than what I was looking for.
That doesn't happen very often.
That's why I pointed it out.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Anything else on septic tank revitalization?
No, that's all I have for that.
Okay. Let's move down to SOS.
So the rain gardens, I don't know if you guys had a chance to check them out, but they're finally got the second round of cleaning them out, and then we replanted them and planted them a little bit more thick, and I think they look really good at this point. And then the other thing, just to draw note of, is we were able to use the NORP plants for that, which is that partnership that we use where we were able to get free plants. An estimated saving is about $1,400 in free plants that we got to use. And then we used Spiro Landscapes and their crew that came down, like just really detail-oriented people. They move all those rocks, those little rocks out of the way. They move them all out of the way, make sure they're really weeding everything, and they put it back. So really some great guys to work with. And then I imagine we may have to the grass has been just coming back there very aggressively at Regatta Park. So I think, we want to stay away from using herbicides and things like that. And, there may be another need to go in there and do some more, like a bigger weeding again at some point.
Okay. I don't have any questions on the maintenance, so.
Okay. And then for the spring rain garden training that we talked about, so Maria Cahill, the instructor, has been confirmed. Cody Cha, the videographer, he's also been confirmed that he can make that event. So we're looking at March 30th from 10 to 1 in the community room in the library, and that'll be a free training on rain gardens, a small component on shoreline plantings, and then also we'll go out into the field and we'll have a look at a couple of rain gardens that we have. And Maria does a really good job of doing these kind of interactive critiques of them, that she has this form that says like the 30 things that should be part of the rain garden, and we kind of go through it. And she's a really great instructor. So this is going to be a free training, rain gardens, and shoreline plantings. And then as requested, I put together an estimated budget there. And I think room rental, because we're using the library, it should be free. So you can cut that one off. And then the videographer amount that I have in there, as I kind of explained in the narrative, I'm not exactly sure how he'll charge that. I think it kind of just depends on timing and the amount of time it'll take us to finish that video, too. And if we use this training as part of that Save Our Shoreline video, then it possibly could be cheaper than it becoming a whole new thing, which my understanding wasn't to be a whole new thing. Did you have a different plan on that?
Different than just the SOS?
Yeah, like your thought was to include...
Well, no, I think we actually talked about like having it be a standalone, but have some of that information that it can video information, videography stuff, put into the SOS one.
Okay. Then it would probably be a little bit more expensive, because then he's going to have to do like more production on that.
I mean, I would defer to you though too to see, and you and Cody, as far as what the best product looks like.
So,
but
Paul, can you refresh my memory? We allocated money for this last time, correct?
for the training, I believe, I'd have to. I know we have it available in the budget.
Okay.
So that was the key. It's part of the SOS improvement.
So do we need to reauthorize this for the purpose, or go ahead and make it? have it come out of the budget expenditure that we already have?
You moved to allocate up to $600
Okay.
for training, publication, and videography.
Okay, so we're good then.
Yeah.
Glad to see that's coming together. Anything for Seth on that?
Whatever the end product is, it'll be available on the website, on our website.
Yeah, we should get it in digital format and put it on the web.
Yeah, okay.
So Paul,
Okay, first off, on the grass carp front, our submission that we, Joe and with my reviews and your reviews put together, as you may remember, there was a change in hands at ODF&W, and that lead person retired, and now the lead person has provided us a different track method, I guess, forward. It just means we have to change the verbiage of the submission effectively. It's not a big deal. I mean, all the information had to be there in the first place, but if you remember that submission, it was like number 1 and number 2. It was just very much like a application form, whereas this is supposed to be just more like a presentation report. So that's going on. The big change, though, is that we looked at the process as going through the Wildlife Integrity Review Board. That's who we thought we were submitting to. As it turns out, they want us now to just submit directly to the commission in paper form, with then basically getting on their agenda and then having a presentation in front of them, from which they would either in between our presentation or after our presentation seek, at their so choosing, it's their choice, to have the director look at it, their office, basically ODF&W, and or this Wildlife Integrity Review Board still. So instead of it being more of a linear approach through the Wildlife Integrity Review Board, it's more a straight to the top, let them run their process, and then come up with a decision, if that makes sense. So in order to get our submission of suitable quality for the commission, we need to have one of the other components of your contract that you have with Max Depth Aquatics also completed, which is that stocking schedule. And the reason we didn't do the stocking schedule previously is because we thought we had to go through the Wildlife Review Board, and if we got shut down there, it would have been a waste of like $5,000 for you. So he just wanted you to be aware of that. I mean, it is in the contract to do such, but he just wanted you to be clear as to what we're kind of looking at now.
Okay, so what has this done in terms of changing our timeline? I see where it says 3-month minimum lead time, but what does that mean in terms of when the expectation of finishing this documentation, having it prepared, and requesting that we get on their schedule?
Yeah, it's definitely added a couple months for sure versus if we would have submitted it like we thought we kind of did in February. We would have been then waiting to get through the Wildlife Integrity Review Board at some point, which is...
So the schedule of the commissions, when's the next commission meeting?
They meet quarterly. I don't know the date offhand, but they meet quarterly.
So are we talking about fourth quarter then? Shooting for fourth quarter, or are we talking about third quarter?
I think
third quarter would push us within a 3-month window, so we'd have to do fourth quarter.
Well, right. So, I mean, okay, if they meet January for their first quarter, or if it's end of March for their first quarter, I don't know where that plays out. But, yeah, easily from, say right now, a couple months before we submit to them, so, say that's May, then if we got right on their, June meeting, or if it's wrapped around, yeah, a third quarter is a fair guess. I think fourth quarter is
Here's why I'm asking, because
sure.
In our last meeting, I talked about, how we want to get the public involved. What do we need to do to build public support? should we be, pulling together a, grass carp committee or subcommittee or whatever to kind of assist the district in getting the word out so we can have, people there to support us at this meeting, right? I need to know that schedule. I need you to start, pulling together what we need to do. That action plan has to be in place based on when we are going to go do this.
Sure.
Right? Because if we're going to be shooting for fourth quarter, then we're going to have a summer's worth of activities to engage our constituents, and get them involved and understand what we're doing and, build support for this. Right.
Yeah, and
So we have to get moving on that.
yeah, and in fact, I mean,
I
the
don't see
benefit
anything
of
here.
say a fourth quarter, if that were to be, would be you have your Devil's Lake Revival if you so choose to put that on. You do have like a summer activity, a whole nother vibe. People are back on the lake. People that are new to the lake finding out stuff. So I mean, yeah, there's, and frankly, I don't suspect. I mean, given the aquatic survey came back, as it did last year, that you're going to be in a rush for needing grass carp, say June 1st, or even,
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking
No,
about,
that's what I mean.
about having
That's why I'm
public
saying that.
support for when we go against the commission.
No,
We go
that's
to
what
the
I'm
commission
saying,
without
is
it.
that you're not, pushing it, having it get pushed back does not hamper your, like, real objective of vegetation management. That's what I'm saying.
Well, okay,
I'm not talking about
maybe
that.
this will answer the question, though. You say here that in the paragraph above the max depth aquatics existing contract heading, the lead time for getting on the commission's agenda remains at approximately 3 months at a minimum. So are you saying that, are you only saying that because the meetings are quarterly, every 3 months?
Correct.
Or because, so, I mean, if they have a June meeting, it's possible that we'll be notified in late May that we're on the June agenda? That's what David's concerned about.
See, and if that's the case, then we have one meeting before, we would be able to be on their agenda, right? And what kind of timing does that give us in terms of, getting public involvement and public
No, I heard your
support at that
question.
meeting?
I was just
Right.
clarifying the risk, which I feel is zero, based on the needs for
Yeah, but that-
vegetation management this summer.
That's a totally different conversation.
I was just clarifying that. That's all, David.
And I'm not
I
saying-
understood what you said, and to get the support which you're speaking about in the line, you can decide when you submit to the commission, right? So you can make that decision as to when you want that document to go to them. So we're in control of that. And that's why I was talking about
all I'm
the
asking
end
is-
game about it not being like you don't need grass carp June 1st. That's what the point
I
was.
wasn't going there, Paul. I was just asking for a timeline when we expected to be at the commission so that we can walk back and determine what actions we need to take in between now and then to, build public involvement and get public.
Yeah, and I
support.
heard all that. I was making a side point, so, yeah, I get what
I would
your
like
concerns are.
that at our next meeting.
Okay.
Like that communication and action plan so that we can, start driving to a date. Right. We need to do that because we can't keep just pushing it out and we can't go blind into this.
But, I mean, the strategy could be that when we find out when the meetings are, I mean, it's not a difficult matter to find out when they meet quarterly, right? We could make our submission, the day after the second quarter meeting and have 3 months to organize ourselves.
Yeah,
I mean,
guaranteed,
We
yeah.
can, I think you're also saying we can control that.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Well, if we can control that, I don't see the issue. Right? I mean, you can do it whenever you want. We can put them in whenever we want. We get to decide that. Okay.
On the Max Depth Aquatics, the reintroduction survey, stocking survey, did he give you any indication how long that would take him to get that done if we task him on it?
Time-wise, no, but I would estimate a couple months. Yeah.
So I think that, as we go through this, I'd like to start seeing, expected dates for delivery on these work products and be a little bit more specific about the timeline that we're marching to. Okay?
Well, anyway, I'd make a motion that we approve further implementation of the existing contract with Max Dip Aquatics for the stocking schedule for sterile grass carp.
I'll second.
I mean, I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's already part of the contract. You need it to keep going, so.
So we have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Economic study. Beth?
So first, I should really apologize because this is the second time I've dropped this document on you and have kind of asked in like 48 hours to get feedback on it. And I'm well aware that it's a long document.
Did we have 48 hours?
Probably like 46, actually. You're right. Probably 46. So I do apologize for that. And I looked through here and there's a list of the changes that we made. And then one to include in real estate. For the Lakeview properties, when I first presented, we only had land values. We didn't have like what the improvement values would be. So we were underestimating properties by like 100,000 or 108,000, if I remember right. So we were able to include that, and then that increased the time economic loss 25 million to 29 million. And then there's a list of other changes that we made to it. But then if you look kind of at like Table 21, which used to be Appendix A, you'll see like the one-time loss went from, time loss I just said increased by 5 million, and then the annual loss went from about 3 million to about 2.5 million, and that was just us adjusting some numbers. And then what's kind of interesting is going through this, we had to work with a lot of other agencies, and for the most part, they were great to work with. The county assessor's office, for one, has been really fantastic to work with. The county appraiser, Matt Wiley, down there has been great. We've had really good work with ODFW, and there's been a lot of people who've been having to get numbers to me. And I don't want to name names, but one agency, I talked to like 7 people in their agency saying, here's what I'm looking for, these are the kind of numbers that I'm trying to find. And they just didn't have them. They didn't have them available. And then yesterday we're looking in the News Guard, and there's a new study that shows state parks contribute to economy. Wherein they did this statewide study on camping numbers, and no one at the locally, state level, regionally, like no one apparently knew that the study was going on. But the good news that's in it is this was specific to camping numbers. And the number that we had, the way that we found our like day camper or overnight camper was we took that Longwood study and then we adjusted for lodging, we adjusted for food. And what we came to is that we found that an overnight camper was, in our study, like $89 a night. And what the state found is that they found that a party, each party spends $275. And if I remember correctly, the party was normally 3 people, like that was their average. So if you break that down, it's like $91. So I think we find that the numbers that we are using, I think really are pretty solid numbers for like the summary part of it. So there were some other changes in there, and I mean, if you guys feel, if there are some changes that you guys want, like some small changes, we're proposing that we kind of accept this document, and if there's some small changes that you want to make, and if not, we can kind of talk about it now, so I'll kind of turn it over to you guys.
Brian, do you have any comments on the document?
No, I mean, I think it's very well done, pretty complete. And obviously you're limited by your resources, but you seem to have done the best you could with what information was available. Hopefully we don't have more discoveries after the fact like the camping study, but I would, reduction, third paragraph, As a result of growing concerns about the usability of the lake, the City of Lincoln City and the sterile grass carp. Shouldn't we say the City of Lincoln City, the DLWID, and the EPA partnered too? I mean, I remember the DLWID having a much bigger role than the City of Lincoln City.
That is an easy change.
In fact,
Should you, city?
I think it maybe should read the DLWID and the EPA. And
Well,
I don't. I
the
was.
city was.
I want to give the.
Well, I thought, didn't we,
The city was the.
more than just that, on the partner list for that, you know, so Fish and Wildlife, Senator Watershed Council. I mean, there was a bunch of, there was a bunch of agencies that actually went into.
Well, I remember the city. I remember the city being supportive, and it's fine. Just leave it in there. But I think we now include the DLWID.
Right. And I think they got, the EPA did like a Phase 1 grant and then a Phase 2 grant.
That sounds.
That was
familiar.
all part of it, and the city got the Phase 1 part of it. So I guess, like, when it got to the introduction of sterile, of the carp themselves, I guess that was more Devil's Lake, but when the whole process was city.
I
so-
think you're right. I'm just not.
But
recollecting
I think,
that.
yeah, I think adding DLWID for sure.
Okay. Any other suggestions for minor changes prior to accepting? I hate picking apart some of the wording, but it's okay.
6 hours to do that, David.
Yeah, I know how it is with wording. It's just, you know, I was glad to see the changes that went in, so I was happy with that.
And you know, this is our document, so it's not, you know, it's not like a consultant is giving it to you and you're never going to see that consultant again. I mean, these are things that if we want to relook at this on an annual basis or something, you know, we can do that.
I'd just like to say that personally, I think that the reduction in market values, you guys are real conservative. You know, drastic reduction just because of the economy. Without lake recreation, I think you would see another pretty drastic reduction, not just 8 or 13%. That's just my personal opinion. But from being here when there was weeds to when there was not, I'd hate to see it go back and flip-flop back the other way.
Yeah, I mean, I think the basic point comes through that it has a pretty huge economic impact.
Right.
And, you know, and I think it's good to be conservative. So, yeah, I see the same thing that you do, Randy, but, you know, I think if you're conservative, nobody can argue with the numbers, and there's still big numbers, then
Right.
it makes the point even better, I think.
Right.
So,
And I think, you know, what you talked about is like what are just like the best, most defensible number that we have, and let's move forward with that. And I think if we can find something that is better, more applicable, I think certainly use it, but the challenge was just finding that.
Let's just hope we never have numbers actual numbers to compare.
Right? It's a hypothetical.
Agreed.
It's all hypothetical.
Yes.
Okay, so would somebody like to make a motion to adopt the document?
just looking for I'll certainly make the motion that we adopt the Devil's Lake report on the potential economic impact of non-native aquatic macrophytes
Second.
with the very minor changes that have been suggested.
Okay, we have a second. Any further discussion?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
So you're opposed, or you?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Okay.
I'm opposed.
Can you elaborate?
Yeah, go ahead.
I expressed concerns with numbers that are... Numbers just... You would have... This would be packed all year. Making assumptions very difficult to use to find some very number to that represents economic reality.
Okay.
I'm not picking on Seth. I think bottom line.
To what you're saying, it seems to me that some places are good for business and other places are good for living. I can tell you, as having had the only motel on the lake, that business was extremely good for about 8 months out of the year, and the other months it was a throwaway because you couldn't do a lot on the lake. But that didn't mean...
Weeds and no weeds.
Well, weeds and simply cold and rain. I mean, most people don't want to be out on the lake when it's inclement weather. And yet the ocean holds a fascination for people when it's particularly bad weather. On the other hand, I can tell you there are several people that used to live on the ocean that moved to the lake. Roger Sprague is one of them. Because it was a better place to live and because he had a place to put a boat and to moor, etc. And so it was very attractive to him. He did live right on the ocean and had to paint every other year, that sort of thing. So the lake, I think, has great value for certain uses and maybe not so much for business.
And that's my value of the lake.
So how does that argue against there being a great loss if we have?
I agree that there's a great business.
Oh, okay.
A lot of economic value regarding that's
Okay.
because of the lake. Huge economic benefit derived from the people of around the lake.
Okay.
If I might make a comment, thanks to everybody for providing the input. And one of the things that we did do, based on some of the good feedback that we got, is we re-looked at visitors and expanded the footprint of day trippers to basically not 50 miles, but all the way to Marion County, all the adjacent counties, and took those out of the lodging component of because we know from the Marine Board study, and I should let Seth, because he's the one that's been looking at this, but to my recollection, it's the Marine Board study. We know where people are coming from and how many are coming in, so that's some really good data there. And since we knew by county, we said, okay, well, let's push Tillamook County and Marion and Polk and Benton, and call all those people day trippers, whether or not they come and stay the night, and really trust that if it's a Portland address or further, that's our overnighters. And so we were able to, I think, be more conservative in some of those numbers. And then also, as Seth's got here in just the staff report about the fishing value, we got data from ODF&W specifically, which was less. Looks at a local trip as, 6-pack of beer and some worms, and you're out $15, and that's probably pretty valid. And then the day trippers, they're out $15 plus the gas or whatever, so it's like $42. And then if you're overnighting, you're still only going up to about 61. So it's really changed that down. But the reality of it is, as we've refined this, I think, and as we've shown, it's really the real estate that's the big diamond. I mean, that's the real value. All the other stuff is dwarfed, by just real estate values. In fact, even local tax base loss, I think, probably dwarfs all the other bits, let alone real estate loss. So it's like, but the refinement process has definitely made this stronger, and that was the goal. And so I think it is stronger. I think it is it's more correct. We don't know for sure. We're relying on some published data, some published studies, that 8 to 13% loss for macrophytes. Well, it's the only one that's out there. Maybe we could say it's 20 to 40% based on our local understanding, but we haven't published that stuff. So for us to rely on it would not give as much credibility to the document. So that one, obviously, we look at. And then with the Longwoods one, well, local knowledge might suggest it's too high, and we did look at ways of reducing that, because we suggested that if you're coming to the lake, we're going to only attribute 50% of your trip, your $131. Only 50% of that is going to we're going to take credit for it, because you're going to go do something else in Lincoln City too, knowing that most people want to come here and spend about 8 hours worth of time, and if you're going to the lake, it takes an hour of loading that boat and offloading that boat just to be there. So you're probably using a half a day, and so we thought that was pretty fair. Versus if you're going to the mall and you're going to the casino and you're heading to doing a little beach walk, you got your 8 hours filled in different ways. But we really did try, and I know Seth and through these reviews did bring this, I think, into a more red face test on those components that where we could, and then again with the real estate value being so much the giant in the game, by really probably being conservative, this report, I think, shows that Devil's Lake has values which could be, if refined a bit, but at least has put a peg, at least in for 2013, some knowledge that we can look at, and I think it's pretty fair for most points.
Matt Wiley, the Lincoln County appraiser, was very specific in terms of his determination of the increment of value added for being lakefront and then lake view, and so that part is really solid. More solid, I think, than most of these, than the data relied on for most of these kinds of studies. But I would say otherwise, the methodology is pretty typical of these types of studies and is conservative. And I think for that reason, it gets across the basic point again, in a conservative kind of a way, that the impact is enormous relative to the cost of doing what we want to do to maintain that level of value in the lake.
Okay. Well, I wish we would have had this before we motioned to accept it, but anybody need to revoke their acceptance? Okay. How about sewer, Brian?
Sewer. Well, not near as much happened this month as last month. We're still waiting for to come up with a resolution, a formal resolution to approve. And part of the reason that we haven't seen it so far is that I think this month's, or the last meeting of the council was canceled, and then I think the city manager had some concern whether or not the ADA might apply, the Americans with Disabilities Act might apply to the elimination of the requirement to have curbs and sidewalks. I did send him an email explaining why. I have some experience with the ADA, and in my opinion, it clearly doesn't apply, because it basically, to sum up the ADA in 25 words or less, the purpose is to provide accessibility for the handicapped to commercial and public buildings and facilities. And moreover, the only time sidewalks and curbs are implicated is when you already have them, and then you need to put in curb cuts or ramps to make the sidewalk accessible from the street level. But if you don't have them in the first place, you're not required to put them in. There's places in Lincoln City that don't have them, for that, because you're not required to. So, I'm hoping that we're past that issue, and I think it's just a matter of the city's hired a new attorney, and he's, I'm sure, backlogged with a lot of work, and so hopefully we'll see that resolution in the next meeting or two.
Okay. Thanks, Brandon.
Yep.
I need to skip back because I didn't see the engineering study on the agenda. Sure. So, Paul, do you want to talk about the engineering study?
Yeah, so that's just a topo survey, and I just put it in here that, you have in your budget to spend up to $2,500 on this. I'm actually upping my confidence that we'll find something that will make it such that you don't have to spend any money, based on some stuff I was doing today. But just as a matter of expediency, I thought it reasonable to ask you to authorize me to spend your appropriated budgeted money if needed, and doing so through the accepted means of state standards relative to public expenditures of funds of less than $5,000, and what the number that we have appropriated is $2,500.
Okay. That seems reasonable. What would the time frame be? Would it be before the next meeting? You'd have to get all this arranged?
Well, that's why I kind of wanted to see if you'd authorize that, such that if it, yeah, that's exactly why. Whether or not we found somebody and spent it, and had that done by then as a result of, that would be a different question, but having the ability to go after it would move it forward.
I'll make a motion that we authorize the lake manager to spend up to the budgeted $2,500 for the topographic survey, if needed.
Second that motion.
Okay.
I would, discussion, I'm sorry. Let me
Yeah, discussion.
Okay.
Go ahead, Brian.
I guess my concern is, how do you know that you might not need more? I don't want to get caught in a bind if, it turns out to be $3,500.
Oh, I don't, yeah. And so that $2,500 was a guess back in the budgeting period. So if we did need more, we could come back to you, look at making a resolution to change the budget, which then you could appropriate from it. You can move money in that improvement fund significantly because you have a certain amount already appropriated, but that would take a resolution.
Oh, okay. You didn't mention, and I didn't notice, or I didn't look back at the budget, but so this authorizes you to spend what's the max of what's been allocated in the budget.
Right.
Okay. Well, we don't want to go through that process unless we have to, so I'm all for
Capping it.
Yeah, 2,500.
All right. Any additional discussion? Kip? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Communications report.
Okay, so we're going to have a couple add-ons here, too. I've failed to put a couple of these event-type things that we've got going on. But just for kickoff there, I don't know if it's my month or your month ago. It's my month to go on the radio station. So that'll be, it's the third Tuesday of the month, I believe, is our spot on KBCH at 7:30, so we'll be there. Of course, we're internet streaming, always making that announcement. I think that's, it's a huge part of our communications, just that we have streaming live as well as on Channel 4, which helps get the message out and about the district, et cetera. We're scoping and working on the listserv for the spring edition for the listserv. And then the two add-ons, David Skirvin and I have been invited to, and I would see if maybe, Brian, you wanted to tag along too, because of the idea of the LID. We've been invited to present at the Chamber for their Tuesday, March 26th meeting. So 11:45, I think, is typically the start time. It's going to be at Ace's Bar and Grill out at the golf course, Chinook Winds Golf Course, and basically giving an update on the district with the key components of the grass carp, East Devils Lake Road, the sewer LID, which is, again, why I mentioned that, and then septics. But then also just to give people a lay of the land as to what the district is for, for basics, what the Devils Lake plan is for basics, and then focus on those kind of more topical things. I gave a similar presentation to Rotary 2 weeks ago. Very well received, as I was told. They said that they enjoyed that. They felt it was very informative. There's about 20 to 25 Rotarians there at Salishan a couple Wednesdays back. So it's basically that same format. Now, David and I and potentially Brian could look at a different format, but I think that might, we'll talk offline about that, but I just wanted to get that out to the public. And then, do you want to talk about the Dash?
Have you heard about the Devils Lake Dash, May 18th and 19th down at Regatta Park? Jet ski races are going to be there, and there's also vendor opportunities and educational opportunities. I think similar to the Revival, that they're going to kind of have it set up there for folks. So applications for vendors are now being submitted, so if we want to have a booth down there, it'll cost $50 since we're a chamber member and a nonprofit since the chamber is organizing that. So if you want to have a booth down there,
I think we should.
you want to spend $50?
$50 in a weekend of your time.
Yeah. I'll be there.
Yeah, just let me know. I'll be happy to man part of the booth.
Okay, great.
Take a shift.
Cool.
What's it, where, May 17th and 18th, did you say?
May 18th and 19th. Jet ski races on the lake.
Oh, and then this, I was going to add this as just an announcement, but speaking of events on the lake, so as you know, Community Days is coming up, and there is a Community Days event on Devils Lake this year. Sandy Gruber, who works for the City of Lincoln City, GIS department, thanks to her for a whole bunch of things relative to that topographic survey, by the way. She's just a very helpful resource. But she has, on her own time, set up a kayak event on the Saturday of the banquet. I've got the Community Days flyer here. So Community Days, April 17th to the 27th. So on April 27th, Saturday, kayak tour Devils Lake at Regatta Park, 9 a.m. to noon. And I think it's, bring your own gear kind of thing. But it's pretty nice to have Community Days. We bring our lake steward to Community Days, but Community Days is bringing something to the lake too. So I think that it's important to note that as this inaugural event kicks off.
What day is that again?
April 27th.
27th.
Yeah, 9 a.m. to 12.
Thank you. Any other communications? If not, safety report.
Yeah, so this is much longer than you're used to. Normally you just see a one-liner thing, but that's because we had a meeting with the Special Districts Association of Oregon just in February there, and they do an audit every 3 years with us. And there's a lot of things that they'd like us to look at and work on, and they're all listed in the staff report here. Developing policies, I think, is the key, and we really need to look at our overall policy manual. But there's a couple specific that we need to just bring up to date. Personnel policy. There was one of the questions he had for us. If we knew about this mandatory reporting law that is passed through the state now, if you're working with youths 0 to 18. You are a mandatory reporter. So if you're working with, you're a volunteer with, as I understand, volunteer with the Boy Scouts or working with Devils Lake Water Improvement District, and you're having an event, and maybe you have an intern that's 17 years old, like we did last summer. That puts us into that mandatory reporting section, and that's new. That's brand new. I think January 1st, 2013. So. We need to look at that, and it's his advice that we just, declare ourselves as mandatory reporters. I think based on the direction that we've been moving with the district as far as like events and offering, trainings of sort, it's probably likely that we're moving past that gray area.
So what do you do as a mandatory reporter?
Well, if it has to do with basically like child abuse, child neglect.
Right.
So if you're a witness, if you suspect that there are things, you need to report it to authorities that can.
Oh, okay. So we need to make sure that if we see something, we're required to step up, go forward, and say,
Right.
"Hey, I saw X, Y, Z happen." That kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, does that also include things like when I'm with Scouts, we have a two-man rule, right, where adult is not to be alone with anyone other than their own kid during an event without two kids present or two adults, so that you always have that safety net. Does that also include in what you're talking about in terms of policy and what we want to?
Well, that would be like a institutional policy,
Right.
And that wouldn't necessarily fit into the mandatory reporting because you're not necessarily not going to report something because I see why the Boy Scouts do that because it makes
Just
sense.
from a personnel policy and stuff like that, if we're going to be
We could look at that.
falling into
Yeah, we could look at that. And what I did mention to special districts is that, I think we need some help on that, because this is something new to them too. Well, I mean, not completely new because it's been the law for teachers and first responders or whatever. I don't know what the classifications that all mandatory reporters were, but now that pie has gotten a lot bigger. So, that was some of the feedback I gave him is that I think if they can develop some helpful training stuff so that we know what we need to do, just become more aware, I think all the better.
Do we have an idea when we're going to get some of these sample policies that we can personalize? And
Yeah, they said about 3 weeks from when we met, so they're basically in the next week or so, I would hope.
Okay. Is this something that we can ask them to maybe include if we decide to do board member training in July because we have an election and we may have new board members, and if we want to get that on the schedule?
Yeah, if they have a mandatory reporting thing, exactly. It might be chicken and egg there because
Right.
it's.
Just thinking forward.
But I like that idea. Yeah.
Well, and we should be able to get samples and good samples for all of these items that are listed here, and the personnel policy in general.
Yeah.
For special districts, the mandatory reporting stuff, the procedures for that. The safety policy, that's the third or fourth bullet point, third from the bottom on the next page. Employee training and the light duty return to work, all of that stuff we should be able to get samples for, and we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. And I don't think we should spend a whole lot of time on this because other people already have spent a whole lot of time on this, and I think we should steal from them.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And the other thing I would ask is, in terms of, the employee training bullet, if that's something we want to do. If it's online training, it might be something good for all the directors to have to, as we're out, interacting with staff and very, the public in general when we're doing our, that's just a, have some of that seat management stuff. Good.
Also, Paul, one thing I would, we also get our insurance through SDAO, correct?
Right.
You might contact them when we get these samples, or even they may be the first contact to see, if any of this is going to run afoul, or if they have samples what that's consistent with our liability coverage.
Yeah, and because that they are the ones that we're going to get the samples from, so would hope, right, that they are in compliance. But you're right. I mean, it might not be. There may be something they stole off the shelf, and their other departments haven't looked at it, reviewed it. But my hope is at least that it's consistent. But
or at least that they just, if you get samples from somebody that's not the insurance wing of SDAO, you might send it over to them and ask if there's anything that jumps out at them as that potentially deprive us of coverage in a.
Yeah. Sure. Are there mandatory dates which we need to accomplish some of this stuff by?
He didn't give us any, but as far as the mandatory reporting law, that just happened to come into effect, and so. You could, right at this meeting, declare yourself a mandatory reporter, and you'd be in compliance if you ever. Then you would just become, and
I thought by law we're already.
Well, it's really gray in the interaction level. So if we, if we just had an event, and it's just really gray, and it just becomes more and more as you progress, it gets less gray. It becomes more black and white.
So why don't I propose that? I think our next event's going to be the DASH event in May, which will have a interactivity at. We have a meeting before May, so let's shoot for understanding what our requirements are and making those proclamations or whatever prior to that event. So in the next 2 months, let's try and kind of bring that into closure. How'd that be?
That sounds good. That was kind of my goal for all these two, anyhow,
okay.
Just to try to get the whole policy review done within, that and the budget in the next 2 months being the focus.
Okay. All right. You want to move on to TDML?
Yeah. Really not much to update you on because there hasn't been a meeting of the larger group or the bacteria group since February 14th when they held it at our office and then had their presentation, which was put online and streams live, the TMDL. So nothing really to report there.
Okay. East Devils Lake Road?
Yeah, so there is news there. So there were, I laid it out in the text here, but I was also sent recently a chart of these granting agencies, grant names, state submittals, et cetera, that have been taking part on this process. And the county submitted a grant on their own behalf by themselves to the U.S. Department of Agriculture in January as the applicant and the submitter. The Salmon Drift Creek Watershed Council did a similar type grant to NOAA Fisheries in February, and they have in the works an April submission to OWEB. So that is basically the update. And we're talking, I think I wrote it in the text here, fair amount of the sums potentially needed. Just let me back up here.
You said 5 million to 30 million, I think, before.
Yeah, so the fixes are, well, 0 to 30, and the middle fix, I think, that they were looking at was about 4.5 to 5 million, the one that they feel like that they should look forward. And I believe the county submission to USDA was for 4.2 million. And in the report that I got from Catherine Pruitt today, it says U.S. Department of Agriculture. In mine, it says U.S. Forest Service. Well, the U.S. Forest Service is under the U.S. Department of Agriculture at the state level, so that's where, and they're probably in the Commerce Department too. So that's the other layer of it. Anyway, so that being, I mean, if the county got that one, that's pretty golden. And then if the Salmon River Creek Watershed Council got the other ones, even parts of the other ones, on behalf of the county, then seemingly most of those monies would be there. And then, as we talked before, we're not looking at, even if they got the money, say they got awarded in June 1st of, having that thing repaired by this next winter, then you go to design, and then you bid it out. But if you get the money, then you can start moving those other things forward. So.
Is that situation deteriorating?
It is. It's progressively deteriorating. There's, last year it was 10 months of water on the road.
Right.
And so far, I mean, I don't know when it started this year, but it was.
It seems like, the more material you put on there, the faster it sinks down, and the more often they have to do it. So.
Absolutely.
Do we have any type of idea how many fish are being destroyed in that process?
Certainly some. I don't know. I mean, the amount of fish that go up that system are anywhere between 150 to 1,000. And so, potentially there's been a few fatalities. So if you've seen a few of that, if it was a low run, 150 run, and you saw, 1 to 10 of those get hit, then that's pretty marked. What's changed is the fact that people have actually helped those fish across and helped to mitigate what would otherwise be slaughter. I mean, this fish would be getting run over during the night often.
So how often is someone out there?
When they're running, it's been most days. Thanks to mostly the Watershed Council, we've pitched in, but just folks that live on the backside of the lake. They've just pull over and see them and hop out. I think I mentioned last month, Adam Ropp, somebody that I know well. He was there and just popped out, moved 20 of them across inside of half an hour. It's just that's where they were there. So the risk is intermittent. And then, if a semi-truck came through and took out 3 or 4 fish, it could happen, but, it's hard to know.
Do they have, people with stop signs on each side or anything?
It's mostly, what the protocol we've got is, wear a vest, try to educate people. People tend to slow down and ask you what you're doing, so it's not like a traffic stop. Right. The signs, somebody, I think maybe it was Randy that asked about those signs that were up there that were gone. Somebody asked about the fish, maybe it was you as well, Kip, sorry.
Probably not.
I found out about those. So basically, they didn't get taken out by some official because they weren't of code. It was that the wind took them out, and so it was, even though they tried to fortify them with some washers or something. This is what I'm getting secondhand, is that's what happened, is they just got blown off in the storms and went out in the wetland, and somebody had to go fish them out. So there's a good chance that for the next winter, we could get those reinstalled and have that awareness continue.
So I guess my question would be, if the solution is $5 to $30 million, would there be any advantage in formalizing the process, since it is fairly effective at saving those fish? Can we chip in money, or how would that work to make certain that there was coverage? Significant coverage, adequate coverage during any specific run.
Oh, for just the man-hour coverage or something?
Yeah, what I'm saying is, you've got a $30 million ultimate solution or 5 million, you know, can we patch it for, you know, $10,000? I mean, if what we're doing, if what they're doing is effective, and the solution's $30 million, wouldn't it be prudent to spend a few thousand to get us through till the $30 million?
Oh, well, yeah, I could, absolutely, yeah. You know, knowing that, you know, that it's not only about the fish, although that's important, but it's also just about the road and the other thing, and so the other guiding, you know, principles are also moving forward. But yeah, and then, you know, if you did do that, if you did make a pledge of some amount of hours or payment to an entity that was able to make sure that that happened, that could be match for, well, potentially match for that restoration.
Well, it seems like not only would that make sense, but we would have an obligation to do.
Well, I mean, it's definitely within your purview to look at Fish and Wildlife. It's one of your mandates, right? It's one of your mission statements. And, you know, whereas transportation isn't, right? So of the issues surrounding around East Devils Lake Road, it's Fish and Wildlife, pollution into the water, you know, so, you know, you as a board directing funds towards those elements certainly is reasonable, and, you know, it's up to your discretion to do so. And then, like I was suggesting, like, if you did do that, then that may have some benefit to, say, grant opportunities, which you're providing real dollar match, you know, versus not really being able to say, we're going to put $50,000 into this for the road fix, because the road fix kind of falls outside of, you know, you could justify maybe because you're, you know, I mean, you could certainly justify it because of the Fish and Wildlife issues too. So I guess you could. It's just we're not a real transportation industry, you know. So I don't know. I'd have to keep thinking about it, but yeah, I mean, I think what the statement you would be making would be positive relative to a granting agency that says other people have a little bit of skin in the game too.
Question, you must talk to Fish and Wildlife about the situation. How concerned are they? I mean, why aren't they taking steps?
Money. I mean, you know, they don't have money to do a lot of fixes, but they are players in this, I would think, to the extent of helping it move forward. But like as far as just them, you know, and then again, you know, it comes down to really it's like mostly transportation issue, right? But then the Fish and Wildlife issue, and then the pollution issue, and those are the reason we're getting more buy-in. In fact, the Forest Service, that application that went to the Forest Service, is a bit tangential too, because that is looking at, and I haven't looked at it directly myself, but as I understand, ties to forest access and forest lands that are upstream of that watershed. Typically, the Forest Service might spend money on, say, a culvert repair that is downstream outside of their property only because it serves the native fish that need to get up to their property. And so that's kind of the tangential connection.
So I guess the question that, you know, kind of back to what Kip was talking about is that worth having a discussion with Salmon Drift Creek Watershed Council to determine, you know, what the plan is, you know, for next year, if there's some things that we can do to shore up what activities that they're sponsoring or that we can co-sponsor. If that's something that we want to pursue, I would suggest that we do that fairly quickly. So if we do need to put a line item in the budget, we can do that. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we have, another 3 or 4 weeks to get another item in the budget if we want to have a category for that? Or do we already have a category that we can leverage for those type of activities?
You know, I think if you're going to try to make a program, it's better just to make a program, right? So you might have something that would work. But, again, we're talking about the next fiscal year, so like you're suggesting. So if we did get it in this budget, you'd have funds available for, say, November.
So
Yeah,
if we,
it's a good idea.
is that something that we kind of want to think about, Kip?
Yeah, I think it's a real opportunity to get some real work done.
Some positive impact?
Yeah, I mean.
I agree.
Oh, you're helping. About it.
Yeah.
Okay. So Paul, can you do that? Would
Yeah.
that be
If I get mine.
Yeah, I mean,
something that we could take care of?
it's definitely something that, we can consider in the budget process, you bet.
Okay.
So,
Plenty of
so
time for
let
that.
me just ask though, what is the $4.2 million fix? I mean, I figured that number had to be arrived at because something costs that amount of money. Is it raising the road, making a little bridge for a certain fish passage? What is it?
It's as I recall, it's going from,
It's like a 60-foot bridge or something.
yeah, going from like two 12-foot bridges to two 60-foot bridges, plus raising the road 3 feet, and then also widening the shoulders a bit to make it go up 3 feet. You can't just go straight up, obviously. And then also mitigation for creating better fish habitat, because currently the water just goes along that ditch, and that's really not helpful for fish. They don't want to be in a ditch. They want to be in a stream. So converting that ditch into more meandering stream is also part of the fix. And I think, originally I think they thought it was about 4.5. I think it's closer to 5 million right now is what they're more targeted to. But those are the big fixes, going up 3 feet and a 5-fold expansion of the widths of the two bridges.
Yeah, and so this is 3 years at the
Oh, yeah.
minimum. I mean,
I would guess, yeah.
and so I like Kip's idea a lot of looking into something we can do immediately.
Yeah, at least for mitigating the impacts to fish and wildlife. Absolutely,
All right. Looks like, shall we move on to the Lake Stewart Award? Do you want to give us a brief overview of the two proposals?
Yeah, so we got 2 submissions. One nomination for Joanne Daschel. Joanne is, I'll just read it here because I don't want to provide any misinformation here. Joanne invests tremendous volunteer time and attention to overseeing the Taft High School nursery that provides native plants for the Devils Lake Water Improvement District SOS program. Together with her husband, she spends significant time out on the roadside of East Devils Lake Road, so here we go about the salmon, rescuing disorientated fish on their journey through the watershed while taking every opportunity for roadside litter removal. She participated in the annual Summertime Devils Lake Revival and testifies on matters directly related to the protection of Devils Lake. In addition to owning and operating a local landscaping business, Joanne finds time to serve on the Salmon Drift Creek Watershed Council, advocating on watershed issues that have an impact on improving Devils Lake for the community and visitors of the Lincoln County region. Joanne deserves public appreciation and recognition for all her generous efforts of time and skill to benefit Devils Lake. Sincerely, Gretchen Ammerman Smith. And the second nomination is for Mr. Paul Caton, and seeing attached here, Paul Caton spends a tremendous amount of time keeping an eye on Devils Lake, whether he's out rescuing stranded salmon off the road, sampling water to assess quality, inspecting prior dam removal projects that he helped successfully implement, or clearing debris to ensure free flow of water for fish passage. In addition, he reaches out to the area property owners to discuss lake issues, participates in lake advocacy events, such as the Devils Lake Revival, hikes to look for potential project sites for further restoration activity, and testifies at public hearings for protection of the lake. As an active board member of the Salmon Drift Creek Watershed Council, he helped establish the Watershed Council partnership with the Taft High Nursery that provides some plants for the SOS Save Our Shoreline program, and is a key supporter force behind the efforts to finance the repair of East Devils Lake Road. Paul Caton is a champion for the continued protection and restoration of Devils Lake for the future generations, submitted by Mr. Dave Price.
Do any board members have anyone they want to nominate? Beyond this, yes. If so, state your reasons why. Okay, so looks like we have the two.
Yeah. And I'd like to say that I think of a couple of people, but nobody as deserving as either of these two, so at least they come to mind right away.
Do we do this through a little ballot, or?
I was going to bring some Post-its because I didn't really feel like printing up a whole ballot. But yeah, that's appropriate. We can just shred up some.
Just take a little corner of the paper,
Yeah, if you want to do that, or I can provide a corner.
just pass them down.
Dude, I can do
When we get,
5 ballots real quick here.
Cool.
yeah.
Two that are number of years.
I would say, I think she's been on the board for a couple years. Yeah, maybe two years.
Salmon Drift Creek Watershed.
Salmon Drift Creek Watershed Council Board, yeah. And then, the TAF 712 thing, that goes way back. I don't know how long she's been doing that, but beyond our connection to it with the SOS program, I mean, she basically helped start that program up there, so that's got to be, I don't know, it's longer. It's beyond the couple of years that she's with the Watershed Council directly.
Yeah.
Joanne was here having the discussion on the lake levels. Justified a lot of business. She had the courage to come up and justify.
I think as did Paul Caton, I think.
Did he as well?
I think so.
I mean, either. Wonderful.
How about a co-award?
It's up to your prerogative. I mean, you could do.
And I would do that.
We had, the first recipients were a couple, Al and Fran Rice received it. In fact, the nomination process doesn't say just an individual. It could be an entity. It could have been, you might say in 3 years' time, say, hey, Lincoln County, we're going to give it to you for fixing that road. It could be at that level, too. Or, the city for passing a septic inspection ordinance, or,
Or Brian for creating an LID.
Absolutely, yeah. So, it's the entity, individual, couple, I mean, it's all pretty open. It's really your award for recognizing people. Or
Kind of between Paul and Joanne, I mean, has either one done something exceptional in the last year beyond what they do in a normal capacity that you know of, Paul?
Well, they both just are really solid, and I don't want to be the dividing line.
I'm just asking a question. I'm not trying to.
Does Joanne work at the high school? Or?
She just volunteers with the high school program to do the greenhouse, and they have a regular food garden there, as well as the native plant garden there that she really kind of oversees.
Well, they'll probably both be around next year.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough, but you got to make a choice.
I think we should award it to both of them.
Then we might not have a good candidate.
Next year we can award it to both of them again.
Yeah, there you go.
I hate to say no. But they both do so much.
Yeah.
Well, that's sure the easy way out, boys. That's a good way out.
Do you want to pass in your ballots to me? And
Is both an option? Right.
if you put two names on there, then each gets a vote. Not, if there's a single vote, it may push the other person over. So.
Yeah. Well, can't we vote if we want them both?
Sure, you can put both. If both gets.
I'm talking about a structure here. It's not something that's
Okay.
rigged.
Okay, so here's the deal. If we get three both votes, then we'll go with both. If we get more than three for another singular person, go singular person.
Instant runoff voting kind of deal.
And we'll do a runoff vote.
So it can't be
If they
like,
tie, which I think is possible.
can't be like,
If we don't get three, either way,
one
we'll
of
cut
them.
one or the two out, I guess. I know which one's yours, because you didn't use
We actually have to have your initials on it, too, because it has to be, sorry about that.
so. I think I know who.
Has to be recorded, but you can have a ballot, you have to disclose how the vote came out
Okay.
as well, though.
All right.
that's my secret.
So we have one for both. Do I say who voted that way now?
You don't have to, you can just have it be part of the minutes.
One for Paul, for Joanne. Oh, this is going to be fun. We have two for both. Oh, co-award it will be. We have three for co-award, so both wins. And I will be.
Now we got to authorize twice as much for the banquet.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the least we could do.
Okay. So does that increase our expenditure for the?
The banquet and the award, you
Banquet
basically
and
need two awards, and
Okay, so I will make a motion that we authorize up to $500 for the award and the banquet. That's a little over double,
okay.
in case we have extra seats, because we have a larger crowd now, right? Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So I want to thank our two nominees and our two award winners for the year. See you at the banquet. All right, Devil's Lake Revival. Seth.
Yeah, it's about time to start thinking about the revival, and I guess one, are we going to hold it again, and then two, the date for it. So, I mean, Devil's Lake Revival, we've held it the last 2 years, kind of community festival where we celebrate Devil's Lake. There's informational booths there, a lot of in-water activities. In the past, we've had pontoon boat tours, kayak trips, stand-up paddleboard demos, a regatta, water polo match, live music, interactive booths, food, children's activities, and then we've had a raffle of a few things. With our big prize is always a kayak, the full kayak setup, like life vest and invasive species permit.
What does that run?
For the kayak,
Yeah.
I think it's been under 500, generally even like 350-ish.
Yeah, I think we got the kayak for $250, and then paddle, life jacket, additional stuff for about $100 total. About $350 maybe.
Okay.
It was up.
Yeah, I was thinking sub's quite a bit more, so.
No, that's true. They're pretty.
I think that, I think we talked about doing a sup last year too, and I think the kayak, it's more, it opens it up to a bigger audience of people, I think, and more people use a kayak. So the other thing then is the budget issue, and we're requesting, we've generally been doing it for $3,000, requesting $3,500 this year, and part of the reason for that is in the past we've been really helped out by the Oregon Coast Today, and Dave Price, that was owner and operator of that, and he did our design for us and cut us a deal for that, and was just a really big supporter of the event. And now under new management, not sure what would happen there, so we can expect like our advertisement costs to go up. And we've also been helped out with music in the past. I've always had a friend who's been willing to come for really cheap to do it, so that's possible we might not have that.
Have any other friends?
I know, I was just going to say this because I don't have any friends, but
So that sounds like a big stretch for $500, advertising and a band.
and I mean it's been close. I think we've always been really close on the budget of it.
Yeah.
The one thing that's possible is the city's Visitor and Convention Bureau does have grant money available, so we might be able to, depending where we advertise, there's some kind of stipulations on how you use that money, but the idea is that you're bringing people in to Lincoln City and from out of town. You know, it's not like for us to do a promotion of the Oregon Coast Today. Well, maybe, because the Oregon Coast Today now is up and down the coast. So maybe that would be something that they would be open to. But we might be able to cover some of that, and we might actually be able to make it cheaper for us.
Okay. And this is all out of next fiscal year, correct?
Well,
Or we'll have some pre-expense and post-expense,
Right.
right? So it'll be a combination of this year's budget and next year's budget?
right. I think that's probably,
Okay.
I mean, yeah, to be realistic, you might have a few expenses. It really depends on the date. If it's July 10th or something, then you might have more on the,
Well, I'm leaning
Current fiscal
towards the 13th, personally. I like down the 13th, Friday.
Problem with the 13th,
yeah, Friday the 13th.
you're following the weekend of the 4th, basically. Usually people push out a big weekend, they're not as apt to.
I think the 4th is
Right after that.
a week prior, though, with the,
Thursday, the week prior.
yeah, I think it's
It's
on a
Thursday. That means you're probably going to stay Friday, Saturday, Sunday,
And then this would be the following.
following Saturday.
Yeah.
I'm thinking if you put a few weeks between that, you might get more of a turnout.
Yeah, you got a point there.
I'll just say, that Hoop It Up, if it has any kind of turnout that it's had in other cities, like I've actually been to the one in Spokane, which is just enormous. It's like 12,000 people show up, and they essentially close up the center of Spokane with like 12 square blocks of basketball courts. Anyway, that might promote a bigger crowd at the revival.
When they compete for time slot?
Those, you're playing basketball like maybe twice a day for 3 times a day for 45 minutes, an hour. So you got time in between. You got other things. All those people in town. I mean, I don't know how many people are going to be at the Lincoln City one, but the ads.
They had 60 teams, and so I think they're hoping to get 150 teams this year. I think the reason to not go up against an event is not so much the stealing or sharing the crowd, but the support people that actually volunteer to have booths and that sort of thing get used up, and they don't have the time to double up.
Okay.
Is that, I mean, that's part of it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I actually hadn't thought of that, but then once you said it, it's like, oh, yeah. Like, I'm thinking of the people who...
Yeah, the people you
who
want to
are
ask to
both of
show
them,
up.
right.
Or will you be?
Right, yeah, exactly. I've already got volunteered as event staff for that Zupadev thing, yeah. So,
Well, maybe the 20th is the best way to go. I know it's not your first choice, but I didn't even think about the 4th of July being the weekend before, so.
yeah, I mean, it's close. It's definitely, you're right. I mean, if you can afford to do 2 trips, you might not do them back to back in a week, 2 weekends for the coast. So,
But do we draw a lot of people from out of town, or is it mostly local?
what was your estimate, John?
I think we should figure it out this year. I think we should ask that when people sign up, just ask zip code or where you're from or something would be good. But I think we get a decent, I'd say it's at least 50-50.
I would too, yeah. Just looking at the faces, and you know the people locally that are there, they're saying, hey, and they're saying hi to you, but, I mean, I would, yeah. And I know that the person that won the kayak was from out of town.
Yeah, I think the past
both years.
yeah. And we tend to get, we've gotten really lucky. We've had beautiful weekends, and we tend to get people there who didn't even know what was going on, who are just going to be down at the park, too, that also get to take part in some kind of cool things.
So,
Our July meeting is the 11th. 13th is closer to that than the 20th. I think we're all more likely to be in town on the 13th.
I'll be here on the 20th.
I got a suggestion for you if you're going to take a survey of where people are at. We did one of these in our store quite a few years back. We basically took a map, Northwest Oregon, and then we put it on an easel and on a board, and have people push pins in where they live. Salem, Eugene, Portland, in town. And it was really interesting to see where people were from. It was interesting. People really enjoyed, marking out where they're from.
Right.
On that perimeter, people write Toronto,
Yeah.
Canada, and stick a thing there. But it made it more fun instead of intrusive. Hey, where are you from? Type
Right.
thing. So it's pretty cheap.
Yeah, that's cool.
So that's great.
Good idea. So, I guess I
How about
will.
the 20th?
20th? Anybody have an issue with the 20th? Lock it in.
Cool.
Okay. So let's do the 20th. I'll go ahead and take first shift on the boat.
Good deal. And I believe we might have a third boat this year. Just starting rumors already.
A third boat? Well, we kept two going solid.
Yeah.
I want the big cover.
There's a new one out there, I think, somewhere, yeah.
Not the one that you rebuilt this winter, okay? Okay.
Okay, it's
Yeah, you can put me
July 20th, right?
July 20th.
Put me down for a boat duty also.
Right. Anyone else?
Oh, I checked my schedule, and what was the thing you were looking, earlier in the meeting, there was some, you're looking for some help with,
Devil's Lake Dash?
yeah, the dash.
17th May, I believe.
May 18th and
Yeah.
19th.
17th, 18th?
18th and 19th.
18th.
Well, calendar looks good for me. Put me down for that as well.
Okay.
If you still need more drivers, did train Clark up last year.
Okay.
He's available.
Great.
The stage.
It's Gabe Mike.
I don't know.
No, it's not up.
Yeah, that's,
The last I heard, I think it was going slower than they expected. But yeah, I don't know when they expect to have that up.
You get an update on that?
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, let's do that, yeah.
Maybe we need to get him a second one to get it going a little bit. Right.
Okay.
That'd be great to have that.
So do you
in
need us to
person.
authorize the 3,500 tonight, or do you want to scope it out a little bit more, and if you need more, lock it in April or May? Either way.
Yeah, that's fine. No, it's not going to, I mean, at this point, it's not going to slow us down.
Okay. So, see where you're at, and if you once you get to a more solid number that you're comfortable with, go ahead and make that authorization. Or we'll put it up for a vote if we get it authorized. There you go. Try and authorize it. How's that? Okay. So the 20th will be the revival. Any non-agenda items? Anybody?
Nope.
Right.
Everybody in between, no.
Okay. Public comment? No public left tonight. Board comments and announcements. I will remind everybody that if you want to apply for position 4, position 5, the candidacy must be filed for next week, 21st. Both Brian and I are running again, so.
Has anyone signed up besides you guys?
No.
You're kidding. I mean,
All right, sure.
that's for your position.
Oh, I'm kidding. No.
Weren't we told that by several times that?
Okay, so just wanted to make that announcement, remind everybody, ample opportunity to do that if they're interested. And anything from Paul, Seth? All right, well, I will adjourn our meeting.
It's a YoPro.
What happened to all that venom and everything? Surprised you, and